For the first time in 2025, let's welcome back Sky News Political Editor Andrew Clennell. I'm glad to see you rested and raring to go, Andrew. Let's talk about where we're up to in this unofficial campaign. I mean, clearly it's on. They're crisscrossing the nation. They all got back early from the Christmas break. What are you hearing about a potential election date? Do you still think it'll be May?
I think it'll be May or April. Probably, I think more April after my discussion with the Prime Minister on the weekend, where he kept saying the budget scheduled, the budget scheduled. He didn't say it was happening. So the only window I see there, because you can't really crisscross over the WA election, that's just going to annoy WA voters too much when the government needs to retain their seats there, is a 1993 style approach where Paul Keating, the day after the WA election, called an election. You could call it March 9. Has to have it then April 12 because April 19 is Easter, April 25 is Anzac Day. If he doesn't go for that, he has to do the budget and then he has to go May 3 or 10. People say 17, but I don't think so. So they're the dates we're looking at. It's pretty clear, and perhaps the Reserve Bank decision will play into this. If they get a rate cut in February, which people in the government thinks 50-50, you'd be more inclined to go in April. There's a Reserve Bank meeting in April. If the indications are from the Reserve Bank that there could be a rate cut in April, maybe you'd hang on.
Oh, I still think they will not deliver a budget. It's due on the 25th of March. I've held that view consistently. We'll see what happens. Your point there on the inflation data, we'll see that tomorrow. It'll feed in, of course, to any RBA decision on the cash rate, and that will be material, obviously, to the timing for the strategists in Canberra. If we do get a rate cut, I know the strategists in Labor are saying 50-50. Some of the banking types out there today are saying it's as high as 80% likely we'll get some sort of cut. In political terms, though, one cut, if we got one cut in February, is that enough to turn things around for Labor?
Well, it's enough to stop them getting beat, I reckon, the way the polls are. I don't think they're going to hit majority no matter what. Let's start with that. I think as things stand, it's quite likely that neither party will hit 70 seats. Imagine that. That hasn't happened before in modern times. But that's what we're looking at. But I think it would assist Labor in terms of forming government, getting enough seats to form government, because they'd be able to say, look, we've been through these tough times, we're turning the corner. And that's why they'd want an election pretty soon after that rate cut, before people realise it's probably the only one for a long time.
He is so confident. You know, I don't get the sense, well, you can read the polls, he's in trouble. It's been an absolute trend for the Prime Minister against him and for Labor. But I don't get any sense that he's doing what's needed to turn the ship around. I mean, Jeff Chambers, I think wrote in the Oz today that he has this enormous self-confidence, the Prime Minister, in his campaigning prowess and his popularity. But I reckon he's delusional, Andrew. He's a shocker of a campaigner last election.
I think it's optimistic in the extreme, those people in the government who believe they'll win majority. I just don't believe it's going to happen. Does a leader in this circumstance have to convince themselves that they're fine and they're flying and they're going to get there? Maybe there's an element of that in it. I think both leaders think they're going to win. I think that indicates how tight a campaign it is, and Peter Dutton's hopeful he can get there in majority government. That's a huge ask, but he feels the trend is his friend. But what would worry me on the coalition side is they seem just short. They seem just short of that mark that they need. Now, whether they can just time it at the right time through a strong campaign and pull a couple of points their way to hit towards that majority, or at least 73 seats, let's see. But I think, you know, if there's a sign that the government is pretty worried, it's a small thing. It might sound a bit trite, but and I've revealed it this week. The fact that Albanese didn't go to the Sydney Test, which all PMs go to in recent times, and he didn't go to the Australian Open when he absolutely loves tennis and it is a must for him every year, tells you everything you need to know. They just felt that he couldn't be at those events, get booed, get into that whole scenario of, oh, you're just there for the freebies, you're not there for us, and just adding to that narrative of he's on the way out. So I think that was a pretty telling sign, and I think it's all going to be pretty willing. I think both of these guys are fighters, But yeah, Albanese is going to have a better campaign than he had last time. And one thing he did okay at last time, though, was the debates and the Sky News People's Forum at a time when he tripped up over the unemployment rate with me. So it is those kind of set-piece events that are going to matter a lot. And Albanese is going to be the underdog in those because all Peter Dutton has to do is point to the inflation figures and the fact that very few Australians are better off after 3 years.
I'll go back to the point you made there about, it's a massive ask for the opposition. This feels to me very much like 2010. Now, let's say that they go to a poll in a couple of months' time. Julia Gillard, in the 2010 example, had just got to the leadership. Everyone thought she was unassailable. How do you beat a woman? Of course, no one's going to want to vote against Australia's first female Prime Minister. Well, they did in droves. Right? We ended up with the same amount of seats, but obviously the coalition lost the negotiation. At the time, no one gave Abbott a chance in hell. No one. There was no one out there. He played a blinder of a campaign. The policies resonated. He was authentic where she was wooden. I'm getting that sense with the Dutton-Albanese contest. And, of course, Peter Dutton's a lot more seasoned as leader than Tony Abbott was at the time. I think the Prime Minister's got more lead in his saddle than Julia Gillard did. The PM's out there playing defensive on the seats he's visiting. That's certainly not the case for the opposition leader. Yes, it's a mountain to climb, but I was out in the real world all summer, right, in the seats that make and break government, not in the leafy suburbs, not in the dead reds, out amongst real people. And there is a mood out there, Andrew. There's a real mood, particularly a mood in Victoria that I haven't seen for years.
Yes. There is a mood in New South Wales and Victoria. There is not a mood where I was in Western Australia. I can tell you that right now. Property prices up there have gone up something like 30%. And I think the coalition will only win 2 seats there, whereas they can win as many as 10 in New South Wales and Victoria if they have a good night, or good day, should I say. Now, Tony Abbott in that election won 11 seats. 11 seats ain't going to do it this time. And during that campaign, as you well know, Peta Credlin, Kevin Rudd was leaking against Julia Gillard and saying she was about to take money off pensioners and all that sort of thing. And Julia Gillard had just knifed a popular Prime Minister. So I get where you're coming from, but I think it is a similar election. And the sad thing for Peter Dutton could be it is just almost there, but not quite, because 11 seats, it will be a complete mess for the government. And they'll probably be out, not long. Certainly the next election, they'd be finished. But 11 seats probably isn't going to get him into the lodge this time.
Just quickly, what about the analysis today from Freshwater that's showing there's a real gender divide? We saw this in the United States. It's playing out here. Young men are gravitating to Peter Dutton and the coalition. Young women tending to lean left, splitting evenly, though, not just to Labor and the Greens. What do you think?
I think I've said to you a couple of times now, Peter, that if Peter Dutton wants to win, all he has to do is do a couple of, well, not all he has to do, but one thing he can do is a couple of women-friendly policies and win over 2 or 3% of that voting cohort, and he'll be in a lot better position to form government. That's kind of, but a lot of the policies that Peter Dutton presents, you would expect him to present. What's a women-friendly
policy, mate? What's a women's friendly policy? Do you think we don't care about the economy? We don't care about defence?
I'm not a woman, but I'm saying if he went for that constituency, if he did a couple of things in that area, and I remember Gladys Berejiklian did that sort of thing in the 2019 campaign.
You insult our intelligence to think we don't care about the things that the men care about in the campaign.
People vote, well, of course they do, but people vote with the hip pocket, and if there is a sense amongst women that they don't like this bloke,
we don't vote with our vaginas, mate. We do not vote with our vaginas.
Well, you're the one who's asking me about a gender difference, Peter. I mean, you raised it.
Well, I'm asking you about what can you read in it, and you're saying that he's got to have women's policies to win women. I find that offensive.
What's your suggestion for winning over women for Peter Dutton, Peter?
I think it's about the personality, it's about the warmth, it's about women feeling they can understand the bloke. It's not about policies with a pink cover sheet.
Well, it's something governments do from time to time.
I'm a woman. We'll see. All right. Thanks, Andrew. Good to have you back on deck.